So the purpose of today, so hopefully you'll understand more of the following, more about the Marine Management Organisation and the Marine Plans overview. We'll only touch upon these briefly because these were discussed in last year's SWME webinar, and our focus will mainly look at our monitoring processes and indicators, as well as the surveys and the future of marine planning. But we will go briefly over the marine plans and what they are, because it's important context onto what we're going to talk about today.
So first, we'll have a quick introduction into the Marine Management Organisation, who we are and what we do. So the MMO is the independent regulator for England's seas. We are a non-departmental public body which sits under DEFRA. The MMO have a wide range of responsibilities, including licensing, regulating and planning marine activities in the seas around England, so that they are carried out in a sustainable way. In addition to being the statutory marine planning authority in developing marine plans and licensing marine activities, our responsibilities also include the managing of the English fishing fleet in respect to capacity and quota, creating and enforcing marine conservation bylaws, as well as being part of the initial response to marine emergencies. As England's marine manager, all of our work contributes to our vision of a prosperous future for our seas, coasts and communities. The importance of marine planning is highlighted in goal 2 on the slide there of the MMO's 7 goals to manage a widely owned marine planning framework that optimises, prioritises and manages our seas. So we work with partners across UK government to deliver and develop our 6 core services. So these include enabling sustainable marine development, protecting marine habitats and wildlife, providing regulatory support and assurance, delivering sustainable fishing opportunities, administering marine support funds and supporting global marine protection. So we'll now move on to marine planning itself, the legislation that underlies marine plans, and as we mentioned before, a brief overview of the South West Marine Plan area. So first of all, what is marine planning? So the marine environment is becoming increasingly busy and as a result requires strategic management. The map on the right is a screenshot of some of the activities which take place in the marine environment. And these activities range from tourism and recreation through to ports and shipping. And as you can see, many of these activities do overlap. So marine planning is the process used to manage the use of marine resources in a sustainable and coordinated manner. It ensures the right activities happen in the right place, at the right time and in the right way. And it places sustainable development at the centre of all of our decisions. So yeah, next slide, perfect. So this is the English Marine Plan area. So English waters are divided into 11 areas, which are covered by 6 marine plans, and they're shown in the different colours here on the slide. So these include the Northwest, Northeast, East, Southeast, South and Southwest, with inshore and offshore plans in all areas apart from the Southeast. So the inshore marine plan area ranges from mean high water springs, or the tidal limit, up estuaries, channels and rivers, out to 12 nautical miles. And the offshore marine plan area ranges from 12 nautical miles to the 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, or the territorial limit. The plans have a 20-year horizon, meaning that in 20 years' time, the entire marine planning process begins again. This is because the marine environment is highly dynamic and there will most likely be lots of changes within that time. So let's now zoom into the Southwest Plan area. So geographically, the Southwest Marine Plan extends from the Forest of Dean all the way down to the bottom of Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and then back up to the River Dart in Devon. It also borders the French and Irish marine areas. In total, the Southwest Marine Plan covers approximately 16,000 kilometres squared of sea and 2,000 kilometres of coastline. As you may already be aware, the Southwest Marine Plan is unique in many ways, where our inshore marine plan area contains the most sites of special scientific interest of all English marine plan areas, and the offshore marine plan area contains England's only deepwater habitats. So this flowchart introduces marine planning legislation. The 25-year environmental plan required England to adopt marine plans by 2021, and this is something we have since achieved. Prior to this, the 2009 Marine and Coastal Access Act provided the domestic legislative basis for the marine planning system. The Marine Policy Statement was adopted by all UK administrations in March 2011, which provided the policy framework for the preparation of all UK marine plans. It contained a range of policy objectives and considerations, which are used to inform decision-making in the absence of a marine plan. We then moved down to marine plans that translate the Marine Policy Statement into detailed policy and spatial guidance for each marine plan area. Specifically, Section 58 of the Marine and Coastal Access Act states that all public authorities making authorisation or enforcement decisions which affect or might affect the UK marine area must do so in accordance with the adopted marine plan. And then all other decisions must be made with regard to the marine plan. For example, when a public or local authority creates or reviews a local plan. So this slide depicts the stages of marine planning. Marine plans are developed using the marine planning cycle, which is shown on the right. As you can see from the diagram, evidence and stakeholder engagement is central to each step of the planning process. We source our evidence through ongoing stakeholder engagement and from our evidence team, which produce and commission evidence projects. At every stage, stakeholder engagement is used to gather opinions and feedback, and this ensures that marine plans are as informed as possible. It also helps to reduce the amount of challenge that may occur at the public consultation phase. At the end of the cycle, the resulting plan is laid before Parliament to be signed off by the Secretary of State for the Environment. Once signed off, the plan is adopted as statutory guidance to inform marine development. At this point, it becomes a legal requirement for the marine plan to be considered in all decisions that affect the marine area now and into the future. So why do we need marine planning, or rather, what are the benefits of marine planning? With the adoption of all marine plans in 2021, we have for the first time a statutory integrated management planning framework to manage the use, protection and development of the whole English marine environment. Marine plans therefore provide a strategic approach to decision-making by applying and clarifying national planning policy to guide both developers and decision-makers when using the marine environment. The plans enable economic growth whilst protecting the environment by providing a stronger understanding of local marine resources and activities. Marine plans promote coexistence of activities and allow for multiple activities to happen in the same place and time. So, for instance, the spatial area of each marine plan consists of the seabed, the water column and the sea surface. So therefore you can have multiple activities happening at the same time in different dimensions, or you could have multiple activities happening in the same location but at different times of the year. Marine planning also provides many opportunities for all stakeholders to participate in plan development. The vision of marine plans, or for marine plans, is achieved through the use of high-level marine objectives. So these are the objectives that the UK government and devolved administrations need to reach to achieve good environmental status, and therefore inform the UK Marine Policy Statement and decisions made by the MMO. They cover the full scope of sustainable development, integrating the principles of sustainable marine economy, ensuring a strong, healthy and just society and living within environmental limits. For marine plans, the objectives provide a link between the issues present in marine plan areas, the future vision for plan areas and the policies developed to achieve the vision. There are 55 policies that make up the Southwest Marine Plan. Here is a list of some of them, but it's by no means exhaustive. Our policies are split across economic, environmental and social policy groups to encompass all aspects of marine environments. Policies can be spatial, for example, the Southwest Aquaculture Policy 1, which focuses on maintaining space for areas of potential sustainable aquaculture protection, but policies can also be non-spatial or temporal. It is important that marine plan policies are considered as a whole rather than in isolation, and we encourage a whole plan approach when considering applications of marine plans.
So moving on, I will now explain more about the monitoring and reporting processes for marine plans, as this is one of the major pieces of work that the marine planning team has undertaken for the Southwest Marine Plan in 2023 to 2024. So moving on. So what is monitoring? It is the collection of data to inform the evaluation of plans. It tells us whether marine plans are being used and by whom, and ultimately allows us to evaluate the impacts of plan-led management on the English marine waters, in particular, whether we are meeting the targets of the high-level marine objectives discussed by Ellie a moment ago. So the Southwest Marine Plan's approach to monitoring document, which we will pop a link into the chat, describes how these plans will be monitored. And this document is supported by a separate annex of indicators. So this sets out the indicator descriptions, including quality assurance undertaken. Many indicators have been developed with the best available data and methodologies. The MMO Marine Planning team are continuously working to develop the annex of indicators. Indicators developed with the best available data methodology. The MMO Marine Planning team are continuously working to develop the annex of indicators and associated methodologies to have the best available information to inform findings. So the annex of indicators can be shared, but it is a live document, which is updated based on our learning, data availability and methodologies. So the development of monitoring indicators is also informed by recommendations made by the sustainability appraisal. We monitor our marine plans by using specific measures, which is what we call indicators, to see if we are making progress. We also ask people that are involved in the marine environment, so our stakeholders, for their opinions through surveys, and we also study real-life examples, which are our case studies, to assess plan use and plan effectiveness. Additionally, we will look at any changes in context that the marine plans sit within to inform our reporting. So the MMO has a legal requirement to monitor the marine plans under Section 54 and Section 61 of the Marine and Coastal Access Act. No more than 3 years after its adoption, the Marine Management Organisation produces a report for the consideration and agreement of the Secretary of State to lay before Parliament on the individual marine plan. So every 6 years, a report is produced on all marine plans together. And reporting to the Parliament covers things such as the effects of policies, as well as the effectiveness of the policies in securing the marine plan objectives, as well as progress towards regional objectives and the marine policy statement. In the 3-year report that we produced on the East Marine Plan in 2020, it showed that specific plan policies are having a positive effect. Yet it also identified some limitations and the need for further improvements. So the Secretary of State agreed with the MMO's recommendation that the East Marine Plan needed to be amended or replaced through a full statutory consultation process. This was then reiterated again in the 2023 monitoring report. Then separately, we produced the first 3-yearly report for the adopted South Marine Plan. And this showed that although there has been significant change in policy landscape since the adoption in 2018, the plan remains relevant and broadly aligned with national and local priorities. So instead of amending this plan, engagement amendments to the supporting tools, such as our Explore Marine Plan, and engagement should be improved. So positive progress has been made towards embedding this plan within decision-making processes. And similarly to the East Plan, it is demonstrating positive progress towards achieving almost all of its objectives. So the second progress report for the South Marine Plan is due in July 2024, whilst the first progress report for the more recently adopted plans, the Northeast, Northwest, Southeast and Southwest Marine Plans, are due in June 2024. So we have developed an approach to monitoring for our marine plans. In the document, it sets out different stages that we undertake. One part of our approach to monitoring is that we use logic models, which are like roadmaps showing how these plans and policies are supposed to bring out change in the marine environment. These models can help explain how changes are happening, making it easier to track progress toward making a real impact. Then we use logic chains to simplify the process by breaking it down into smaller steps. It is an iterative process with each step depending on the previous one, and this forms a chain reaction. So indicators and indicator selection. We use indicators to provide metrics for evaluating progress towards plan and policy aims. However, I will discuss this further in a couple of slides' time in the presentation. We need to establish a baseline. It is important for us to measure progress towards achieving the plan objectives. So evidence gathered will be used to tell a story of change since the plans were adopted, helping to identify what impact the marine plans have had over a given period. And finally, but no means least, our quality assurance and data management. So effective monitoring relies on data collection and quality assurance. And in the MMO, we adhere to robust quality assurance processes. So that's internally, and we also ensure that our third-party data providers do as well. So I'm not going to go too into depth into our logic models. This is just kind of for a demonstration purpose only. So this is the logic model that we use for the marine plans. So the plan level model provides an overview of marine plan use. By having feedback loops in place between the monitoring process and using the plan, this enables us to continually improve and make adjustments if needed. Each step, which is depicted by a box on the diagram, has at least one indicator to assess the progress across the logic model. Our monitoring and evaluation of the impacts of the marine plans is based on the assumption of if this happens, then this can happen as a result of. So, for example, if there's a plan use, then observed outcomes can be as a result of the marine plan use. So there are 3 types of monitoring that we use within our approach to monitoring to assess the effectiveness of the marine plans. So firstly, we've got the context monitoring. So this describes the context in which marine plans operate. So any changes in context may affect plan success and are useful in interpreting change in process or outcome indicators. So contextual monitoring is not defined by the logic model described earlier, but is identified under Section 54 of the Marine and Coastal Access Act. So context monitoring sits outside of the logic model, but makes up an important component of understanding the wider landscape the marine plan exists within. And then we have process monitoring, and this assesses the use of the plan. So process monitoring is carried out using stakeholder surveys and indicators, such as assessing use of the plans in marine licensing applications. Process monitoring confirms assumptions made regarding the steps necessary to achieve expected outcomes. And then we have outcome monitoring. So this assesses progress towards real-world changes resulting from the marine planning process. So outcome monitoring is carried out through the use of stakeholder surveys and data-driven indicators and covers a range of data sources from either the MMO teams or other organisations. So we draw on information from Natural England, JNCC, Historic England, and our stakeholder surveys, to name a few. These 3 types of monitoring ensure that we fulfil our requirements of the Marine and Coastal Access Act, but also inform the report structure to set out if the plans are being used and what the effects of the plans are. So you've heard us talk about indicators and the annex of indicators, but now we'll discuss what they are and examples of the data behind them. So an introduction into indicators. They help us measure if we're making progress towards plan and policy aims. These indicators are really important because they help us see if our plans are actually working or not. They look at different stages of what we're doing and check if they're leading to the outcomes that we expect. We use both quantitative and qualitative data sources, as well as using a range of techniques, including surveys and case studies, to gather data on plan use and plan outcomes. And I'll mention this a little bit in detail in the next slide. So existing monitoring data sets are supplemented with new data collected by the Marine Management Organisation. So we collect data internally and externally from a wide range of organisations who support our monitoring evaluation. And moving forward, as monitoring of marine plans becomes more established and experience is gained, learning is then used to improve our monitoring processes, as well as feeding back into the wider marine planning work, such as supporting implementation of marine plans and evidence gathering. So new tools or evidence may lead to updates in the monitoring approach or the annex of indicators that we've developed. What is monitored may also evolve as new or developing influences and ongoing monitoring insights are identified. So as further evidence is collected, it may be possible to formulate new indicators that improve the ability to monitoring existing plan content. So just discussing a few examples of the indicators. So I want to discuss like an indicator on the plan use. So when monitoring, one of our indicators looks at how marine plans are used in marine licensing applications. So during this process, we review the information provided both by the people applying for the licenses and the marine plan policy review that is done by the MMO through the data from marine licensing applications, and that's specifically the marine plan policy assessments tool that the applicant has to run through when they apply for the license. So for example, we look at things like which marine plan policies are used in licensing applications and whether the applicant has shown their proposal is compliant with that policy. This makes up part of our process monitoring that I discussed, supporting our understanding of if and how the marine plans are being used. Ultimately, by understanding this, if the Southwest Marine Plan and its policy are being used in decision making, we can understand if observed environmental, social and economic changes may be influenced by the marine plan. So now looking at indicators, looking at the outcome monitoring, so our plan effect. So indicators have been developed for every high-level marine objective in the marine plan, and this draws on information from environmental, economic and social data. So for example, we have an indicator to measure the abundance and population changes of priority and highly mobile species. So this includes seals, cetaceans, seabirds over time. It also measures the change in disturbance incidents recorded at the coastline. So this indicator uses data from a range of sources, so from local and national sources, including the charity Orca, the Sea Mammal Research Unit and Cornwall Seal Group. So this indicator tests the effectiveness of several of our Southwest Marine Plan policies. So for example, it looks at the Southwest Biodiversity 1 policy, and this policy supports proposals that enhance the distribution of priority habitats and priority species. It also requires proposals to work through several steps to reduce detrimental impacts on the distribution of priority habitats and species. In addition to this, it looks at the Southwest Biodiversity 2 policy, which supports proposals that enhance or facilitate native species or habitat adaptation or connectivity, or native species migration. It also requires proposals to work through several steps to reduce detrimental impacts on native species or habitat adaptation or connectivity or native species migration. And then the third policy that it tests the effectiveness of is the Southwest Disturbance 1 policy. So this policy requires proposals to work through several steps to reduce detrimental impacts on highly mobile species through disturbance or displacement. So successful use of this policy may lead to an increase in distribution of mobile species such as seals, especially where population level impacts of disturbance have decreased. So in the Southwest, the effectiveness of such policies is vital due to the diverse range of species and habitats. So in addition to the environmental data, we also collect social and economic data. We also collect internal data in the MMO, And then by having such a comprehensive approach to data collection, this ensures robust monitoring of the marine plans. And then in addition to this, we have our monitoring surveys and feedback procedures, which I will discuss on the next slide. So indicators used in our monitoring surveys cover both our plan use and the plan effects. So these are the process and outcome monitoring that I discussed earlier. So in our stakeholder surveys, questions relating to the process monitoring were consistently included in our surveys across all years. These questions are pertinent to some objectives outlined in the South West Marine Plans. So these survey questions were developed based on the policies that stakeholders can provide insight on, and this often fills policy level monitoring gaps. So there are 3 key indicators that are supported by these survey questions. One of them assesses if applicants recognise how the policy influences their proposals and decision-making processes. Another is assessing if public authorities consider marine plan policies in their decision-making, particularly regarding enforcement and authorisation decisions. So that's the section 58(1) of the Marine and Coastal Access Act, as well as non-enforcement decisions under the Marine and Coastal Access Act. And then finally, it allows us to understand stakeholder perception on marine plan outcomes. So following on from the surveys, we then held verification interviews as well as focus group interviews for the South West Marine Plans stakeholders. So in 2021 and 2022, we did individual verification interviews with our stakeholders, which followed up on our survey responses. In 2023, we changed it up a little bit and we held a focus group with all Southwest specific stakeholders, following on from our 2023 Southwest Marine Plan survey. So attendees included stakeholders who had responded to the survey or had previously attended a marine plan implementation training session. Therefore, a basic awareness and knowledge of the Southwest Marine Plan was assumed among participants to facilitate our discussions. These follow on from the surveys and aim to gain a greater insights into responses and key insights into the Southwest area. So the outputs from this are really important. So that, as I said, insights gathered from interviews and focus group contribute to process and outcome findings. And these inputs provide more detailed stakeholder-specific perspective on the issues discussed.
So as May mentioned, last summer we ran monitoring surveys followed by focus groups across all marine plans, or the Northwest, Northeast, Southwest and Southeast marine plans. And these were designed to help us understand the use of the marine plans and their effectiveness. So we will just take a look at the outcomes of those. So what did we find? To note, the information we're able to run through today is an overview on how the monitoring surveys performed as a whole across all plan areas, in line with the 2-page summary published at gov.uk. However, this summer we are due to publish our 3-year monitoring report, where there will be more information specific to the Southwest. So let this just be a little taster for now. So we found that across all 6 marine plan area monitoring surveys, 143 responses were received, 39% of which were from decision-making authorities, which for these decision-making authorities was a 10% increase from previous years. So as you can see in yellow, the Southwest had the largest response rate and also the highest attendance at focus group meetings, where the use of environmental policies was discussed. The national focus groups also noted the need for increased awareness and use of the marine plans and Explore Marine Plans on online mapping service, particularly by terrestrial planning authorities. The 2023 surveys also showed that marine plans being used both internally by marine licensing team members and externally by applicants and stakeholders. When broken down into respondent role across all plan areas, the greatest number of responses came from decision makers, such as local planning authorities, followed by advisory bodies such as statutory and non-statutory consultees. In the Southwest specifically, it was found that there was a higher proportion of responses from advisory bodies and other stakeholders than across all plan areas. And we have also observed a 12% increase in local planning authority responses from 2022 to 2023, which is a positive increase based on our targeting towards decision makers. So how are marine plans being used? So the graph shows how often marine plans are used when making authorization or enforcement decisions. To recap, what is made by authorization decisions is any enforcement decision made by a public authority that affects or may affect the marine area. So for instance, this could be the approval, confirmation, consent, license, or permission that causes a change within the marine environment. And this includes the MMO too. Across all 6 marine plan area monitoring surveys, most respondents reported using the marine plans for authorization decisions in some cases, in the majority of cases, and in all cases across all marine plan areas. So it's evident that we still have our work cut out to ensure that marine plans can be used within all relevant cases when making authorization decisions. So how are individual policies being used within marine plans? Across the Southwest Marine Plan, it was found that biodiversity and heritage policies, starred above, were used most frequently by respondents in their decision making, whereas the most frequently cited as not being used by respondents in decision making were our aggregates and oil and gas policies. As mentioned previously, once our monitoring reports are published in full in the summer, we will be able to share more detailed information about the use of policies within the Southwest Marine Plan. So moving on, we will look at the future direction of marine plans and how, as users of the marine environment and members of SWME, you can engage with marine planning. So coexistence and marine spatial prioritisation, as well as spatial squeeze, are key issues for the future of our seas. Our seas are only going to get busier over the coming decades, and we're aware of the need to factor in new activities such as the growth of new types of energy. To deliver our future targets and ambitions on net zero, energy security, Fisheries Act, the environment and levelling up, we need to assess how we can prioritise now, which will avoid putting both the marine environment, but also the 211 billion value of our blue economy at risk. So as a result, DEFRA are leading cross-governmental marine spatial prioritisation for England. The MMO are working closely with DEFRA on each stage of the marine spatial prioritisation programme, which we term MS-PRI, to build our understanding of future demands, optimise use of our seas, maximise coexistence and co-location between all sea users, and prioritise use of our marine space. So as a result of previous monitoring, and as May has previously mentioned, in 2020, the MMO recommended to the Secretary of State that the East Marine Plan, which was the first to be introduced, be amended or replaced. The report identified that whilst the East Plan policies were having a positive impact, changing local and national context meant it needed to be amended or replaced. We have just started the process of developing the new East Marine Plans, having consulted on our statement of public participation for the East earlier this year, which will soon be followed by our evidence collecting phase to inform the new plans. There is still a lot to be decided, however, around how the new generation of plans will be implemented, including potential for them to be more spatially specific, but the aim is for plans to be more effective in sustainably managing our oceans. So how do marine plans and marine plan monitoring link back to Southwest marine ecosystems? So the SWME Forum aims to foster collaboration and knowledge exchange amongst users of the marine area, including scientists and regulators, for sustainable marine ecosystem management in the Southwest. So this includes conserving biodiversity and monitoring ecosystem health. In parallel, marine planning in the Southwest and more widely in England focuses on sustainable management of marine activities and resources. We are always looking to adapt marine plans based on their usability and relevance to a constantly changing marine area, hence why monitoring how the plans are being used and how effective they are is so important. We rely on contributions from marine users and stakeholders, such as those of you joining the call today, to conduct our monitoring survey. So we hope this presentation has given you an idea of how we consider marine plan users when updating our plans. So how can you engage with marine planning? Our aim is to keep stakeholders involved in the planning process at all stages of marine planning so that they can continue to contribute. As mentioned, we will be publishing our 3-year monitoring report for the Southwest Marine Plan later this summer, which is the primary way we will feedback on marine plan use and effectiveness. If you're interested in hearing about this and any future updates on marine planning, please sign up to our quarterly stakeholder newsletter using the links we will post in the chat and I think have already been posted. You can also visit our gov.uk website if you'd like to learn more about marine plans, or you can follow the MMO on social media. So thank you to everyone for listening. Here are mine and May's contact details as Southwest Coastal Planners and the address for our website and our Twitter. So please feel free to reach out if you need.